even slightly wrong, I think you can get into a lot of trouble with the deck. And that's something that we often don't get a chance to talk about because it's very difficult to really go in depth with mulligans and talk a lot about how important it is. But with Kingsbane Rogue, I'd say the mulligan is probably one of the more important points of the deck because a lot of your intuitive decisions, I feel, are not so intuitive at the end of the day. It's things where, like, sometimes you'll keep minions, sometimes you won't. Sometimes you'll keep Kingsbane, sometimes you won't, etc.
All right, well, Papajason has that Kel set to start things off.
Yeah, pretty tough matchup. Pac-Man, Zoo Warlock, I think, got a pretty big boost with the Saronite Taskmaster, where this deck was just struggling to have super playable one-drops in it. And for the longest time, you've just been playing basically bad one-drops in order to get a Happy Ghoul payoff. And this is just the complete opposite of it for DPacman's deck. It is stacked to the brim with ones. In fact, it's so stacked that I feel necessary to read it to you. There's two, I'm going to read it from the bottom up. 2 Fungalmancer, 2 Doomguard, 2 Saronite Chain Gang, 2 Doubling Imp, 1 Prince Keleseth, and the rest of the deck costs 1.
It's all just one-drops and Solarium. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what Zoo can do. And I saw them play with some of the new eggs and whatnot, like Scarab Egg, to use Grim Rally. But in the end, I think Zoo just is really powerful when it does this, which is grab the board early and utilize huge swing opportunities with Soul Infusion, or in this case, Grim Rally might be a really nice option too. Yeah,
2 Grim Rallies are, I think, one of the big features of the deck. And, having sufficient one-drops because of the addition of Saronite Taskmaster, I think that was like the one thing it needed to really push the deck over the edge. In prior metagames with Zoo, they often ran a ton of one-cost cards, and it was very similar to this, but it was power overwhelming instead of Grim Rally. And so that's really the role that card's trying to fill. It's just trying to be additional damage on the board as quickly as possible.
Yeah. Remember the old aggressive Druid decks that played Mark of the Lotus as a +1/+1 for 1 mana? Grim Rally feels a little bit like that, so I feel like this deck has a different take on that aggressive wide board strategy that's a little bit all-in early. And you're not even that super all-in because you have access to life tap.
Yeah, and that's really, I think, the big difference between Grim Rally and Mark of the Lotus is that Druid didn't have life tap and Warlock does. So when you're able to life tap, you care a lot less about your overall card economy and just amount of things. It's really about getting something on board and start attacking.
Yeah, Mark of Yashrock was so important in that deck. Look at this! Pac-Man is steamrolling Papajason.
Yeah, I mean, Papajason's deck just does not have the tools necessary to handle this style of play. If this is the kind of start DPacman is, really ever going to get, this is a bad matchup.
Yeah, he had Keleseth and the Spider Bomb, right? That's, like, outside of a Canal Shot, that's pretty much the ideal scenario.
Yeah, going first, I think, is really one of the important things for Papajason as well. Like, when he's not going first, what that means is he's instantly going to fall behind, and how are you going to catch up from that point? Hunter's a great deck that goes, toe-to-toe when you're both playing one big card a turn. You play your 1-cost card, you play your 2, you play your 3, etc. When there's just a ton of ones, you're really not going to get past it that often.
You would think that the extra taunt off the Saronite Taskmaster would be impactful, but it really isn't that big of a deal, especially with Fungalmancer coming down. Is that lethal? It's almost 1 damage off.
Yeah, which is effectively lethal in this spot. Yeah, maybe. Now, I was trying to think if Witchwood Grizzly could get out of this, but with the Doomguard in hand, there's just like an almost 0% chance. And DPacman's digging deep on this trade. Like, should I trade? And you can see the reaction too.
Did he miss lethal because he did the wrong setup?
Is that possible?
I don't think so. He like looks disappointed in himself. The way he keeps shaking his head and the way he keeps like looking.
Well, the disappointment.
Oh, it's because he could have just Doomguard for lethal.
Oh yeah, well that too, and also if you're going to end up on a trade, it's Firefly might be a better buff.
No, I just like started realizing, because I was like thinking about his Fungalmancer trades, and I'm like, no, your trade was perfectly fine, but yeah, you missed the damage, and
yeah, I'm gonna.
Oh my gosh, the game completely swung.
Well, it is pretty impactful. I still think it's going to be difficult for Papajason to get back into this, because it's a Doomguard that's sitting here. The Hunter's Mark might have something else to say about it. Typically, missing a lethal is not super costly because you're so far ahead.
Oh my goodness.
that your opponent can't recover. But when it's an aggro deck that's fairly all in, there's a small chance. And so here I'm seeing, you know, the Hunter's Mark, the Candle Shot, and then Flanking Strike, and maybe you build a Lifesteal piece to recover.
Honestly, I think he doesn't even need that, because the only damage left that's direct is Soulfires and Doomguards, and he has no cards in hand.
That's a bad
DPacman's... Oh, my
oh, boy.
gosh. Okay, well.
All right, Papajason still needs some help. You know, DPacman with a blunder cost a potentially lot of position. There's some help, but at 2 life.
It's a Soulfire. It's a Soulfire to end the game. And DPacman can finish what he should have started, which is a wrap up the series with a 1-0 lead.
This definitely was one of the costlier miss-lethals that I've seen in a long time. Again, to kind of elaborate on that, typically when you miss a lethal, you're so far ahead that your opponent can't recover. But that's just not the case in this game.
Whew. That's not good.
And this has a very real chance of being turned around. 1 Lifesteal Beast is gonna shut DPacman out of this.
Yeah. 1 Lifesteal Beast, and in the worst case scenario, you have a Mossy Heart. What are the beasts? Life Drinker's good. Any kind of Vicious Scalehide combination is good. There's no like Leroy or charge minions, right?
Nope. 2 Doomguards.
2 Doomguards and Soulfires. King Mukla. Is Mukla better than Mossy Heart here?
Almost certainly not.
Mossy Heart gets you push 10 damage and basically set up lethal.
Well, that could be the thinking too. Papajason is wait, did I remember the deck list right?
Were you asking that as Papajason? Because you're saying, oh,
like,
okay.
Papajason thought here could be like, did I remember the deck list right? Is there another charge minion that I'm forgetting about? And when you decide to play 2 bananas instead of the Mossy Harbor, my guess would be, yeah, you didn't remember it right.
I think, yeah, it could be the case.
This still sets up 17 damage.
Oh, boy.
That's it.
DPacman throws away game number 1.
Yeah.
And
that's rough.
Wow, that is soul crushing, to say the least.
I was going to list DPacman's accolades so far, so I'll just leave it. Well, the red ants do anyway.
I was thinking just like, I guess,
fire
like
ants?
Grizzly or something, like some kind of animal that's always known to be like a little aggressive and hostile.
That's actually a good question. I'm trying to think. Oh, you know what's always really aggressive and hostile? Swans.
Oh, you're just, okay, I get what you're doing.
No, I'm serious. Like, swans will, like, hiss at you. Like, they really, really dislike anything getting inside their space. They're very, like, they're really pretty-looking animals, but they're very mad. Like, all the time.
That is not you at all.
Well, aside from the physical perspective, I'm talking about the anger part.
Game number 2 is Zoo Warlock versus Even Warlock, and this is a matchup that's largely going to be defined by the AoE available to the Even Warlock. Hellfire, Defile, even Drenofernal can come really clutch against a slew of 1-mana minions.
Yeah, I am curious how much the low curve from DPacman changes the dynamic of the matchup. It definitely gets a lot harder when your opponent AoEs you because your reload's just not quite as strong. You know, a lot of the Zoo decks, they relied on having like mid-range pressure and just kind of, you play 2 things at once, you play 2 things at once, you play 2 things at once. This deck is like trying to get as much on board as possible at all times. And so if DPacman has to adjust that playstyle, even just a little bit, I think it could really change the way that Papajason has to manipulate and partition the resources from there. But, you know, early on, Flame into Plated Beetle, this is one of the worst feelings you have as a Zoo Warlock player.
DPacman would have also loved to get the Soul Vision on doubling him, but can't until the Fungal Mancer is out of the hand. But by then, is it too late? Yeah,
so the thinking here for DPacman was coin doubling him. And a lot of times that's going to be good enough because you expect Papajason to life tap a certain percentage. And when it's Plated Beetle instead, you're going to have to deviate, and that deviation is costing quite a bit right now.
Plated Beetle is just a very versatile card, surprisingly, despite people accusing it as just being a pack filler card when it was first being revealed.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, it's just a filler 2-drop, but it's like it ends up being very solid for a lot of different decks for different reasons.
Yeah. And here, it's like I could see DPacman easily kind of going in on Grim Rally, but this is right into the Hellfire turn. And so I think that the Grim Rally still makes a lot of sense here. It just stings so much that it's like on a Hellfire and a Defile, you're going to get hurt. And that's the nature of the way that Warlock aggressive decks have to play. They have to take these chances and live and die by these thin edges.
Yeah, Papajason was ready the entire time with Hellfire, so not going to be very surprising. And the best part is, gets into Hooked Reaver range.
Yeah, and so I can never fault DPacman for the attack there. This is largely a game of ignoring those kinds of things exist from the other side. When they don't have them, you get to punish them massively, and when they do have them, it's a really terrible feeling. And that first attack, you see the shake of the head, he knows what's happening. Oh.
The light protects me.
Yeah, that's as bad as it gets for a turn 4, playing a single minion as a 1/1 going up against, well, one of the biggest minions in even Warlock's deck.
Yeah, I mean, this is a pretty grim pan out, all things told. And it's not really going to get much kinder.
Yeah.
Looking at an improved Spellstone, you're looking at the ability to even double down on that with the Vulgar Homunculus, the Shroom Brewer that's in there to offer back more defense on board. A lot of times with Shroom Brewer, when you hit this life total, you still want to keep fighting for board as the even Warlock player, because as soon as you fall back behind on board, that's when you're super vulnerable. But if you just keep the taunt minions healed up and healthy, a lot of times that's enough to just keep that push going relentlessly.
Feels bad to not get full Fungalmancer value, but still pretty decent. 6/6 stats for 5 mana, which is
you use the Soul Infusion to get the full Fungalmancer value. It's like an intervene.
Wow, no attack. I feel like the no attack makes it so that things like Shroom Brewer can really punish you.
Yeah, and so for Papajason now, the two big options are, number one, the Vulgar Homunculus into Spellstone, or number two, it's the attack for value and then heal it back up. And I prefer the attack for value because this just sits DPacman in like one of the worst positions they could possibly be in. Anything DPacman does is going to be checked here by the counter swing that the Lifestone actually puts out there.
All right. Soulfire doesn't discard Doomguard. Still, it's not exactly clear skies yet.
It's looking pretty darn clear. I'd say another Doomguard would spell some trouble.
I'm saying for DPacman.
Oh, for DPacman.
Oh, yeah. Like, it's really like, when you clear out most of the threats and you can push, like, I feel all right. But Lifesteal with the Spellstone is just devastating.
Yeah, the 7 recovery health is just so much when you're powering out big threats. I don't even know if you can afford to Solarium in this position.
Yeah. I think you need to Solarium and play everything next turn. This assuming you're not dead on the follow-up swing.
Yeah, well, that's oftentimes enough to make you kind of dead.
Oh yeah, especially with the Death Coil pickup. That's guaranteed lethal. DPacman, Solarium from extra cards. Not bad pickups.
Pretty nice stuff.
Yeah, but not bad isn't good enough.
Yeah, the numbers line up, quite awkwardly here as well.
It's more that DPacman has to play Serenite Chain Gang, which means he can't play Fungalmancer.
Yeah, I was thinking, can you use Fungalmancer, the Taskmaster, Soulfire, and then, you're just going to end up dropping like 2 if you do that.
Yeah.
So
there's just too many things that kill you if you just leave up 1 minion, though. You die with Hellfire, you die off of like almost any Lich King card that deals damage. So I think this is correct, just trying to stay alive. But we know that Hellfire and Death Coil is going to be it. And Papajason with a 2-0 lead, and this Zoo Warlock Admirable is stuck.
Yeah, well, it's by fault of user error in game number 1. So it's tough to see that happen, but that's the difference in 1 damage and not sometimes, is you could get stuck into these situations and it ends up compounding into a bigger issue than it should have been. It's cost you 2 games instead of just the 1.
You should be up 1-0, maybe 1-1 after game 2. But, my heart goes out to DPacman. I mean, Lord knows how many times you and I have also played and felt like, wow, that was just embarrassing play. Like,
Yeah.
felt like that. I just wish no one watched me do that.
Most of the time I miss lethal, I don't know that I miss lethal, and that's the inherent.
And that's the good part.
Oh
of
yeah,
missing lethal.
ignorance is bliss when it comes to that.
Every lethal, I've never missed lethal because I never see the lethals I don't hit.
Yeah. So game is up right now. Ignore the these are flopped perspectives right now, and then that's the correct one right there. Papajason firing up Kingsbane Rogue versus Zoo Warlock, and I definitely think this is more the bread and butter for DPacman. Is this style of matchup where you are really hoping that Papajason just never finds adequate buffs and lifesteal for the Kingsbane, and that's really a big portion of that game plan, is being able to get through the early stages with heavy enough pressure on Papajason that maybe if those tools show up, that they're still not able to recover. And I'd say the big kickers to those, even when you're pushing through, is if the Kingsbane is buffed with lifesteal and Papajason is Doomerang, which we're seeing, multiple of those tools right now, that's really the big nail in the coffin. And so for Papajason right now, it's fight for board as hard as possible, survive until you find lifesteal with the weapon, and use that to recover.
He's going to be able to get it, though. Raiding Party is very consistent, and, a card that we were thinking about, Kingsbane, but we just didn't realize how consistent it made it. Like, a lot of people were thinking, like, oh, how's Raiding Party applicable to, like, roads specifically? And you're like, well, it can fish out specific weapons like Obsidian Shard or Shadow Blade. It's like, oh, but Kingsbane's like a fantastic card. People are like, but Kingsbane just still has trouble surviving aggro. And it turns out when you just give it a little bit more consistency, that it can actually handle a decent amount of pressure.
Yeah, we've been seeing more Hearthstone cards printed that reference drawing a specific type of card.
Yep.
Thinking Elven Minstrel was one of the big precursors, and with Raiding Party being added, it feels like it's a very rogue thing to do, is draw a specific type of card. And then you build your deck around that facet, and that feels like super roguelike to me. You're scrapping with the tools available and trying to do everything you can to get to that favorable position. And that one extra tool with Raiding Party just completely changed the dynamic of how you draw through your deck and the actual progress that you make. I think it's such a fantastic card for this style of deck. The only thing that I was hoping to see for was a bit more counterplay to the weapon. It's outside of freezes, there's not really a ton you can do to fight against it.
Mm-hmm.
You could beat them up, too. That typically tends to work. Just good old-fashioned attacking.
The Soul Infusion now means you can play Doubling Imp Soulfire. The Grim Rally means you Soul Infusion Doubling Imp next turn, most likely. It's all about the now versus later.
Yeah, so Fan of Knives, I think, is the big one to think about here.
Yeah.
If you get Fan of Knives at this spot, it's not the end of the world, but it certainly can hurt. And I think I favor the Soul Infusion in this spot, and favor a trade off on the 1/2. I think at the end of the day, you get slightly more damage when that succeeds. But I'll be curious. I mean, not trading has a ton of merit, too. Just over time, that 1 damage keep plinking away. Makes some sense. And with Prep Fan of Knives available, I'll be curious to see how this goes.
Prep Fan of Knives, Kingsbane.
That's the problem. You float mana.
Yeah.
You float a lot of mana. I'm still thinking that the Raiding Party is one of the directions you want to end up going this game when you play Kingsbane. But here, I think it's fine to float the mana. You're just not happy about it. Maybe you draw something that changes it. Maybe you just dagger up and save the Kingsbane to combo.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Kingsbane into the Buccaneer.
Yeah, very wise to hang on to it.
The 4/4s are coming out, and that's going to be really painful.
Yeah, this is the big task for Papajason now. Can he get past this safe?
He does have Walk the Plank, which helps eliminate one of those threats, but you still need a little bit more. Yeah.
So now, buffing up the weapon has, I'd say, a significant amount of merit compared to previous on this turn. Without Leeching Poison drawn, I would think Papajason would have had to consider, am I in such a bad spot that I just need to hope I draw Leeching Poison? But now you're looking at it and you're going, another weapon buff. Fan of Knives looking okay. Preparation's looking okay. Deadly Poison's looking fantastic afterwards. I think there's a lot of room to battle in this spot for Papajason now. Likely to hold the attack in this spot, but it just starts chipping away. I mean,
yeah,
chip
he has
is very
Doomerang, so
Yep.
he needs to get his charges out. Doomguard. Have we learned from the previous time? Slamming Doomguard on 5.
You know me and Doomguard on 5. I am jamming this thing.
Yeah.
5/7 charge should cost a lot of mana, and basically you're just turning those 2 cards into your hand into coins.
Yeah. That's a really interesting way to put it.
It's like,
imagine if it was 7 mana, but like you could
had like taunt, but it didn't have charge. It had like rush.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what a Mounting Warbeard is.
Yeah, it'd still be a beast.
Yeah. You could probably put in some Druid decks.
Yeah.
Prep, walk the plank. That is a very nice pickup here for Papajason. He can attack and Doomerang.
My issue is just the Doomguard applying as much pressure as it did. I'm thinking that the 2 doubling imps might still be a little bit much. Papajason here is going to be using Doomerang plus the 2/4.
Yeah, doesn't want to take unnecessary damage, I guess.
Yeah, I think this is wise as well. I think I'd much rather sacrifice the 2/4 body and try to get back into it with a big top deck than I would be, trying to chip away with this 2/4 and make a big impact. Oh boy.
My goodness.
You don't often find a 2-mana card to fit into a 6-mana turn with.
Well, there's only
with
one
Warlock.
2-mana card in the deck.
Yeah, I know. You don't often find it right now.
Yeah.
And now suddenly that 2/4, you're kind of wishing you had something to battle with.
Okay.
Ooh, that's a good one too.
Yep, the Cutthroat Buccaneer so that you can buff it up.
So you go up to 12, 4, 5, 6.
So Soulfire.
Soulfire,
one
Doomguard,
one
Fungal.
Soulfire and one Doomguard has been used.
Fungal.
Mancer it is,
It's enough. Send it game 4.
DPacman finally gets over the hump with his best deck against the Kingsbane Rogue. Odd Rogue was banned out, so that remains with Secret Hunter, which is not bad, honestly. And then you can also play the Undertaker Druid, featuring the Amani Warbear, the Stampeding Roar, the Astral Tiger. And
Oh, I can see it now.
now it's Hunter's turn, which can answer with the Eagle Horn Bow. There you go.
Yeah, so Hunter was the deck queued up first, and the Secret Hunters have been not very subtle. They have topped that at 5 mana with Deathstalker, Rexar, and Zul'jin being the only cards over 5 cost. And despite that, we've been seeing the Hunter players actually have quite a struggle to run out of cards. And I think that's been quite a surprise to me. I would have anticipated this deck runs out of cards a little bit faster, but it's featuring the Bloodscalp Strategist, which is a 3-mana 2/4 if you control a weapon, discover a spell, and 2 copies of Mass Contender, 3-mana 2/4 if you have a secret, put a secret from your deck into play. Those 2 tools, I think, give you a lot of leverage to be able to pace out your threats so that you don't just burn out of cards as quickly as possible. And that, to me, feels like such an important facet for the secret decks, is that they're not just gassing out right away like they used to. Now they have a bit more staying power with them.
The Secret can play a lot of mind games for Papajason, but he's probably going to have to attack regardless. Ooh, Toxicologist.
This is also a turn where it's pretty easy for Papajason to just end up playing 3 cards. Kingsbane in hand, and then +2 cards afterwards, thinking like a Poison Toxicologist or like a Toxicologist prep turn, or anything in that angle can really, really be a big part of Papajason's range. So being able to take advantage of that for DPacman is pretty vital, I'd say.
Yep, DPacman with the Animal Companion, realizing that if you play Spellstone, you could be walking straight into a Vanish. Double Toxicologist.
Yeah, no lifesteal, though. That oftentimes is one of the most important cards in an aggressive matchup, is having that card to stabilize your life total. Without it, you often are left looking like a pretty poor aggro-style deck.
Yeah.
A clever concoction.
Papajason, if he plays 3 cards, will summon the Rat Trap, and that's going to be that's actually death, I think.
Well, that's
if he takes the 4 damage.
And that's the thing to think about. I think Papajason had, maybe some intentions of just tempoing out a 3/1 in this spot, and caught himself and went, wait a minute.
Concoction.
So now with the 3rd one, you sometimes get to clear out the Rat Trap via the attack, but that is quite costly on your health. So ignore the 6/6 and hope that's enough.
Yeah, but he's almost dead. There's 6 damage on the board, plus the Kill Command Hero Power puts him at 13.
Yeah. This is,
he's dead.
okay. And just like that, game 5.
DPacman rushing down the opponent.
And sometimes this is this ends up not being as poor of a matchup for DPacman. You know, you could clearly see.
This is an amazing matchup for Hunter.
Well, I mean, on going into Game 5, you know, I'm worried about the Druid deck for DPacman,
Right, yeah.
but he's just coming off the back of 2 very quick games. And Papajason was up to a 2-0 tricks that I haven't seen yet. You know, to call myself an expert on Undertaker Druid, I would be, you know, a criminal vast overstatement for me right now. So I'm curious to see how it ends up playing out and what the matchup looks like.
Well, that new Stampeding Roar card is going to be interesting. Ooh, Masto cart. Oh my gosh. Now, all we need is a Wild Growth to kind of seal the deal. Well, Stampede Roar is a card that I know you're a huge fan of. You love that card.
Yeah.
It summons a beast from your hand, and you give it Rush. So you get to have full value on things like Witchwood Grizzly, which traditionally gets a penalty for their health for having cards in your opponent's hand. And then, of course, you combine that with Giant Mastodon. You combine it with Undasta, and you get some really nice synergy there.
Yeah, I think this is you know, quite cleverly built from DPacman. It feels like it just makes a lot of sense to me. It's like a different take on Taunt Druid, where instead of just relying on Hadronox to get everything done, you're trying to make some new synergies happen, and you have some clever tricks along the way. So I'll be curious to see if this hand is fast enough, and I think that's really, again, what my worry is that I think even with a pretty explosive hand, that DPacman can find himself in some pretty bad spots.
Well, yeah, it's an explosive hand, but it does require several turns of setup. DPacman didn't do anything for the first, well, now 4 turns of the game.
Yeah, like I'm sitting here in DPacman's spot, and I'm wondering, should I swipe this minion? Like, when are you ever going to use this swipe again if you don't right now?
I like Captain Greenskin, but that's if your opponent has it. But, you know, there are a handful of 4 health minions in the deck. The Cutthroat Buccaneer is another one. You can swipe Dread Corsair.
So it's set up for a tempo swipe on the next turn, but that's going to delay the Nourish. But I guess the Nourish isn't really accomplishing that much.
Well, you'll Nourish Hero Power the 2-1, I think.
Yeah,
in
so
that case.
Yeah, if your opponent doesn't tempo play, you get Nourish Hero Power. If your opponent, you know, plays like a Greenskin or plays a Dread Corsair or what have you, you get to deviate with the swipe. But then you're on a 6-mana Nourish, and your opponent's going to try to pressure you again. You know, and then sometimes they play multiple minions in one turn, like in this spot.
Ooh, all the pirates. Now DPacman, he was feeling really good. But now he has to play defensive. That swipe is going to be very crucial. But there's more. Captain Greenskin comes in to add an additional 6 damage to that weapon. And guess what? Raiding Party ties it all together. This is an aggro Kingsbane.
Can get these starts. Trying his best to fight this off, but that Greenskin living at 1 health. Oh, no, take it out. Yikes.
Papajason banishes DPacman to the Shadow Realm. And that is going to be Game 5
that
for
is
the Philly native.
That is an Egyptian god Kingsbane right there. I mean, that thing is massive so quick. And that's a big part of why Kingsbane, I think, has become such a powerful deck. If you are not fighting it early on, it can just play the aggro